Hi, and welcome back to Bounce Forward with me, Tiff Hall. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this podcast, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders, past and present. Now, this time of year, people are still in party mode. There are lots of brunches, lunches, dinners, drinks. It's just a good time to catch up with people that you haven't seen in a long time. So how do you deal with this when you're on a fitness kick, but you want to keep catching up with people? It's really hard, isn't it? Well, today we thought we'd get master nutritionist, dietitian, podcaster, and all-round awesome person Leanne Ward back on the show to give us some of her top tips on how to survive the party season cheaply and without destroying your fitness goals. Leanne, welcome back to Bounce Forward and Happy New Year. Now, firstly, I need to ask you, as a dietitian, for those that are starting their resolutions with eating better, what do you suggest they should be doing?
Look, I think this time of year, there is a lot of resolutions set. And if we look at the numbers and we look at the stats, more than 60% of Australians are overweight or obese, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe that most Australians actually want to lose weight. So I think that starting with a resolution to eat better and lose weight is great. But I think that we need to set realistic goals. I have a lot of clients who come to me and they say, look, I want to lose 20 kilos. And I say, okay, that's great. But let's set a realistic number around that. Because if your goal is to lose 10 or 20 kilos, you've got to remember it didn't take you 4 weeks to put it on. So being annoyed at yourself that it's taking you longer than 4 to 6 weeks to get it off, I think we just have to be a little bit realistic with ourselves and set those achievable goals and say, right, if my goal is to lose 10 or 20 kilos, I realistically should be giving myself 6 to 12 months, which means that I can't do anything crazy or restrictive. I have to make it a lifestyle. I have to make it about something that is going to last long term, because if I just cut out everything, I make it super restrictive. I hate my life. I hate what I'm doing. This sucks. I can't wait for it to be over. The minute it's over, all the weight will come back on again because you'll go back to your old habits. So you have to change that baseline. You have to change the lifestyle habits to begin with. So I think my biggest tip for eating better in the new year is to set realistic and achievable goals and to make it a lifestyle and to plan ahead, because I always say, what's that saying? That plan to fail.
Fail to plan.
That's it. Exactly.
Yes.
But you've got to plan. You absolutely have to plan, because nutrition is one of those things. Unlike exercise, they're both really important. But for most of us, we might only exercise 3-4 times a week at best for some people, right? Maybe not at all. Nutrition, most of us eat 3, 4, 5 times a day. So much more planning needs to go into nutrition than it does into movement, than it does into like our kids' schedules even. Most of our kids will go out and do something fun maybe once or twice a day. We eat far more often than that. So if you're not planning ahead with your meals, you're going to get to a meal time and be like, oh my goodness, I'm ravenous. Open the fridge or pantry and just rate it and eat whatever's there. You're going to default back to old patterns and behaviors that haven't served you in the past, that have led to you gaining 5, 10, 20, however many kilos it is. And it's going to be very difficult to get that off if you don't have a solid plan in place with your nutrition.
You've got a plan. But I find it really hard because we're in the silly season and new year, and you want to change. You've got your healthy habits, but then it's a very social time. So you're going out to lots of restaurants and lots of gatherings and functions. What are your top tips for eating healthily at restaurants if you really want to try and stick to your goals?
I think the first tip, and this is funny because people are like, she's probably going to start with the menu because she's a nutritionist and a dietitian. My first tip is around mindset, Tiff, because if you go in with this all or nothing mindset, it's Christmas, it's December, I can eat whatever I want, I'm going out, I'm going to have a 3-course meal, you're not going to achieve your goals. And not only that, most people actually gain weight. The research shows us, Tiff, that most people gain weight over the December period. And let's be honest, Christmas is one day. How are we gaining weight in one day? It's not possible. We're basically taking the entire of December off and then going, yeah, that's cool, I'll start again in January.
The all or nothing attitude, yes.
100%. So get rid of that all or nothing mindset. You can exercise in December. You can eat some salad and vegetables in December. You can also have a couple of cheeky champagnes and a couple of spring rolls if that's what you like, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So I would really start with that mindset to think this is just another month. Sure, there's a really fun day of Christmas and probably a few more social occasions thrown in there, but it's not like we just write off the entire December, because your health and your body will suffer for it. So really start with your mindset first. And then when you're ordering out, think about what do I normally do at home? When I'm at home, do I have a 3-course meal? Do I start with the bread basket, a glass of wine, and then have an entree, then have a main, then have another glass of wine, then have a dessert, then have a final glass of wine. Is that something I regularly do at home? If the answer is no, and I really hope it is no, you should probably be limiting the amount of food that you do at restaurants as well. And it can be really difficult when you're in a big social situation. Everybody's ordering wine and desserts and entrees, but I would say share. And you might think that nobody else at the table wants to share, but I promise you, every time I say, hey, to my girlfriends, does anyone want to share half a pizza and half a salad? Or does anyone want to share a dessert? Because I'm pretty full, but I really want to taste it. 2 or 3 of my girlfriends at a minimum will be like, yep, sure, I'm really full too, but I want to taste it. Let's get something and we'll share between us. Because it's better for our health, because let's be honest, what we're often eating at restaurants and cafes isn't generally the healthiest things, particularly when it comes to entrees and desserts.
Yeah, what do you need to look out for? Is there anything that we should stay away from when we're ordering?
Not stay away from, but I'd be careful of portions. Like, again, if you feel like some pizza, there's nothing wrong with having some pizza, but do you need 8 slices? Like, do you need an entire pizza, or would 2 or 3 slices be enough to cut it? And you could order a bit of a side salad. You could order a couple of salads for the tables. Say if there's 6, you got a group of friends and there's 6 of you at the table. Could you order 2 or 3 pizzas, 2 or 3, different types of salads, and a serve of steamed vegetables or something as well? That way everybody can enjoy the pizza but still balance the meal as well. So for me, it's all about balance. You can still have what I call your soul foods, right? The things that you truly love. And for me, pizza's it would be if I had to die tomorrow, I'd have pizza on my list. Like, it's that. I love pizza that much, right? But I'm not going to overstuff myself with pizza and eat far too much, because I never feel great. And I hate that feeling when you leave a restaurant and you're like, oh, I feel so heavy and bloated and full, and I'm so disappointed in myself that I overate. I hate that feeling. So I make a pact with myself that I can choose the things that I want to enjoy, but I'm going to do that in a moderate portion. And I know that I have a hard time regulating my intake when the food is directly in front of me. Like most people, we've only got a certain amount of willpower when there's a delicious pizza sitting in front of us. So what I do is I set myself up for success to begin with. So I will ask my friends, does anybody want to share as a starting point? Or I'll say, can I please order this pizza and also this salad or this side of broccolini or something? So that's a second success strategy that I do. Or a third one I might say to the waiter is, can I please order the pizza and a side salad, and I'll get a takeaway box as well? Because I know that eating an entire pizza is not going to serve me, and I'm going to feel way more awful for it afterwards than I will feel great, because I would have overeaten and stuffed myself. So I'll take a few slices, put it into the takeaway box, and then I'm only left with, say, 3 or 4 slices on my plate, and then I load it up with the extra salad and veggies. So I've got a big full plate, some extra nourishing things there to nourish my body and some extra nourishing things there to nourish my soul. I get a great balance of everything, but I'm not overly tempted by an entire pizza sitting in front of me, because adults only have a certain amount of willpower. And typically when we go out to dinner, it's the end of the day, all of that willpower has been drawn down throughout the day. So trying to make healthy decisions in the moment can be really difficult. So I like to tell my clients to set themselves up for success by doing things at the start that are going to allow you to eat better and, get closer to your goals, make that easier to happen along the way.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Now, a lot of people say, but eating healthy is so expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be your advice for some of the best cheap alternatives, particularly for people with families, for a more balanced diet?
Yeah, so I think the whole plant forward, meatless Monday, vegetarian, what are you going to call it, a phase, a trend, a lifestyle, it's absolutely something that has a lot of impact from a health perspective. It helps the planet, the environment as well, and it absolutely helps our budget. Because when you think about getting some steak at the supermarket versus a couple of tins of beans and legumes, one is far more expensive than what the other is. So I'm not saying that entire families have to go completely vegetarian or completely vegan. That's unrealistic. People genuinely enjoy eating meat. Most people do. So I'm not going to tell people to cut it out, but we can reduce the amount that we use, which is going to help from a budget perspective. So if we're using like a spaghetti bolognese mince or something, use half the amount of mince and then bulk it out with, say, a tin of lentils or something, which, let's be honest, a tin of lentils at the supermarket is like $1.20, $1.50 maximum, compared to if you get 500 grams of premium mince, that's like $10 these days, if not 11 or 12. So really trying to reduce the meat component of your dish and bulk it out with a little bit of beans and lentils. That way your partner's not like, oh, what is this bean stuff? He's like, oh yeah, cool, it's still got some meat in there. I noticed the beans, but at least there's meat in there, so I'm kind of happy along the way.
I'm actually hosting something on the weekend, and I wanted to ask you, what kind of food should I be serving that's both like delicious, but also healthy.
Yeah. So I like to serve what I call like deconstructed buffet style meals, right? Because when I host, most of my family and friends have kids, and some of the kids are babies like my ones, or some of the kids are like 10, 12 years old, and they can honestly eat more than I can if they're, boys and they're playing rugby and they just go.
Yes.
So what I like to do is like a buffet style in the middle of the table. And I cannot go past Mexican, Tiff. Everybody loves Mexican. Show me someone that doesn't.
Okay. Yes, perfect.
So what I do is I balance out my food groups. When I think about my core macronutrient groups, I've got protein, carbs, and fat. And then we cannot forget our vegetables. They're a really important micronutrient group that provides fiber, antioxidants, polyphenols, that sort of thing as well. So if I think about Mexican, I always want to give at least 2, potentially 3 options depending on the amount of people I'm hosting. So I hosted, I think 12 adults and maybe 6 or 7 kids the other night, and I did a big Mexican feast. So protein-wise, I did pulled pork. I did it in my slow cooker. I put it on that morning. I shredded it with a fork about 8 hours later. It was perfect. I did chicken breast where I literally just poached the chicken breast, again, shredded it with a fork, mixed some enchilada sauce through, baked it in a dish with a little bit of cheese on top. So I had pulled pork, chicken, and a big thing of black beans. For anyone who is vegetarian, beans and legumes, again, provide a great protein source, or anyone that wants to be that kind of flexitarian approach where we have a bit of both, they could have a bit of chicken and a bit of beans. So that's my protein sources ticked off. Then I chose carb sources, and I did corn chips and I did whole grain wraps, because that way, again, people can choose to have either or both if they want to as well. And from a fat perspective, I did avocado, cheese, and I did some sour cream, because sour cream's a must when you serve Mexican, right? Yeah. Then I thought about my vegetables, and I always want to provide at least 4 to 6 types of vegetables or salads. And people think that's crazy, like what a waste. If you provide it, Tiff, they will eat it. They will eat it. Even the fussiest kids, if it's there, if everybody else is eating it, kids are more likely to try it or at least put it on their plate if it's there and it's available. Same deal with adults. If you don't serve it, no one's going to ask you for extra vegetables. But if you serve it, they'll be like, oh, how cool. Yes. So I had baby spinach, red cabbage, tomatoes, corn, and red onion.
Fantastic.
All of that in a buffet style on the table, laid out, and everybody was helping themselves. Some people were building burritos, some people were building nachos. I myself built more like a nacho salad. Like I started with a base of salad, put some meat on top, sour cream, salsa. What else did I have on top? A little bit of guacamole, and then put a couple of corn chips around the side to kind of like dip into it.
You can even do like a naked bowl or
100%. It's so versatile. It's an awesome thing. And then don't forget, you've got like 3-year-olds there and you've got sort of like 60-year-olds there. So we all eat a differing amount of food. So if we were to serve like a one-pot meal and plate it up for everyone, it doesn't give them the opportunity to have a little bit more or have a little bit less depending on what their requirements are. And absolutely, my guests were going back for seconds and thirds, and that's fine. But I don't want to be the one to say, hey, here's a plate of food, just eat that.
Yes.
Or make them feel bad for wanting to go back for seconds. So I think that buffet style serving is a really good thing to do at this, social time of year for everyone. And hands down, you can't go past Mexican. And it caters for a lot of dietary intolerances as well, particularly if you've got celiacs, because it's mostly corn-based as well. I would keep the wheat wraps obviously very far away from the rest of the food, but they're still available for other people that didn't need gluten-free. Anybody that was vegetarian could have just, wraps with a bit of cheese and a bit of black beans as well. And then if you're vegan, you could have just nipped off the cheese and put some guacamole or something on instead. So it caters for a whole range of people. Same deal with some people don't like red meat. So there was the option of chicken. There was the option of black beans as well. So you get a lot of different variety with the buffet style type of meals. And then the best thing is you get leftovers. Like we probably ate Mexican for the next 3 days. It was brilliant.
That's so good. I'm going to do it. This is so great. Now I have to ask you a question about supplements and vitamins, because a lot of our listeners, they write in and they're like, okay, do I need supplements and vitamins to lose weight? And you're an accredited dietitian, and I have to ask you, is it necessary?
Necessary? Absolutely not. How I think of supplements, Tiff, and I'll give you a great analogy because I love cake and like who doesn't, right? Think about supplements as like sprinkles on your cake, right? They can be nice. They can be fancy. Are they essential? No. I would happily eat cake if they didn't have sprinkles there. But you have to think about getting the foundations of your health right first, because if you have the batter of your cake and it's wrong, it's crap, you use salt instead of sugar or something like that, the foundations of your health aren't right. I'm talking about your nutrition, your exercise, your lifestyle, your sleep habits, the amount of stress that you have. If those things aren't taken care of, nobody's going to care what fancy sprinkles you put on top.
Yeah.
Because the cake batter is wrong. 1 to, I would say 5%, depending on the person. Are you an everyday athlete? Are you an elite athlete? Are you someone that doesn't even exercise? Supplements can have a strong impact in your diet and in your lifestyle, but only a very minimal percentage. And honestly, mostly just for the athletes out there, or those people who are looking at, I could get a gold medal or I could get a silver medal. I need that 1% edge over my competition. And I can guarantee you that's not the everyday client that's listening to our podcast. So can they be helpful? Yes, but you're wasting your money if the foundations of your diet aren't right first. There is no supplement in the world that is going to replace a crap quality diet where someone isn't sleeping, someone's smoking, somebody's not exercising, they're stressed to their eyeballs, and they're drinking far too much coffee and alcohol. No supplement in the world is going to help you there. You're just wasting your money.
Absolutely. I love that answer. So I often get confused myself a little bit about this, and people do ask me. We often hear about serves of fruit and veg. A lot of people are confused by what constitutes a serve. For example, would a side salad be considered a serve or more than that?
Probably a couple of serves. So let me start by saying that for the average healthy adult, what we recommend is 5 serves of vegetables and 2 serves of fruit every day. Mm-hmm. Now, the next question people normally ask me is, are they interchangeable? Because I could eat so much fruit, and the answer is sadly no, because not obviously, for some people they're not aware, fruit has natural sugars in them, which a lot of our vegetables don't have, or don't have to the same extent as what fruit does. So we can't say, oh, I'll have 5 fruit and just 2 vegetables. Unfortunately, they're not interchangeable numbers. We really want to get 1 to 2 servings of fruit in every day and at least 5 servings of vegetables. So that's 5 servings of vegetable, not 5 types of vegetables. So diversity and variety is important. But what a serving of vegetable looks like is about half a cup of cooked vegetable. So I've had some cooked broccoli or cooked carrot. It's about half a cup is 1 serving. So you'd need 2.5 cups of that to get your recommended amounts each day. Or a cup of what we call like salad type vegetables, spinach, tomatoes, cucumber, that sort of thing. If you're talking about beans and lentils, half a cup is a serve. Same deal with corn, half a cup is a serve, and a small kind of potato is a serving of vegetables as well. And people will say, oh, but that's starchy. Yes, I agree. It's a starchy type of vegetable. It's more kind of considered more of a carbohydrate, but it still counts towards your vegetable intake each day, which is really important for different types of nutrients and vitamins and minerals as well. And then when we look at fruit, same deal. It's 2 servings of fruit, not 2 fruit. So a serving of fruit is generally about 120 to 150 grams. And if we talk about grams in vegetables, it's around about 75 grams is 1 serving of vegetables, roughly. And so with fruit, it's generally what we call a medium piece of fruit. So like a medium apple, a medium pear or banana, that's 1 serving, or 2 small pieces of, this time of year, we get a lot of stone fruit, right? So plums, peaches, apricots, 2 small kiwi fruits, 2 small pieces of fruit is considered 1 serving. Or if you cut it all up and you make a bit of a fruit salad for your kids, about a cup of chopped fruit is also considered a serving of fruit. Now, we also consider fruit juice and dried fruit within that kind of budget each day. But these are the ones that we definitely want to limit, particularly for small children, because they have a higher concentrated amount of sugar. When you're juicing all the fruit into your juice, there's a lot more. There's probably 8 oranges in a cup of orange juice compared to if you tried to eat 8 oranges, you'd be like, oh, I'm tapping out after 3 or 4 because there's just too much there. Same deal with dried fruit. It's a lot more concentrated. Therefore, the sugar content is a lot more concentrated as well. So we don't want to recommend them anywhere near as much as what we do fresh fruit and vegetables.
Okay. That makes so much more sense. Okay. Thank you. Now, the other question that I get asked a lot is about good and bad fats. How can people tell the difference easily? You know, what are good fats? What are bad fats?
Yeah. So our good fats are the ones that, I wouldn't say that there's an easy way to tell a difference. Like if you really wanted to, you could easily just Google good and bad fats. But a little hack that I say to my clients is if you're ever going to Google something nutrition-wise, try to Google good and bad fats dietitian, because then at least you'll get a dietitian's blog, or you get something that has a bit of reference,
yes, that's a great hack.
Australian Guide to Healthy Eating or something like that, where there's a little bit of sort of reference and science behind it, because any man and his dog can write a blog. And that's the problem we have on social media, that everybody thinks that they're an expert in nutrition because everybody eats. So everybody's got an opinion on nutrition, and just because you lost 20 kilos doesn't mean that you can then give out advice about nutrition to other people. So that's my little rant there. But as I said, there's not generally an easy way to tell, but what we would consider the good fats are things that are positive for our body and our health, and what we call anti-inflammatory. So I'm thinking extra virgin olive oil, avocado, salmon, nuts and seeds. They're all considered our good healthy fats. fats. Now, we also have what we call, quote unquote, our bad fats, which don't do so much for our body. A lot of the times they promote inflammation in our body and they can raise our cholesterol levels over time. So those are things like fatty types of cuts of meat. So, when you make a steak or some lamb or something, there's a fat around, the outside of it. That type of fat is what we call the bad fat for our body. The type of fat in sausages and salami, our baked goods and our processed products like potato chips, cakes, biscuits, that sort of thing contain what we call our bad fats. Are they terrible for our health? Yes, in the long run, and when we have too much of them. If we occasionally have a piece of birthday cake or have a biscuit with our coffee once a week, it's absolutely not going to completely derail our health. It is really about the quantity that we eat of these foods and also the quality of them as well. If we're eating biscuits that are mass produced in different factories, they're packed full of things like saturated fats and trans fats, which aren't great for our health long term. But if we're making them ourselves, and often if I'll make a recipe, whenever there's, butter or something, I'll substitute it for extra virgin olive oil. I'll half or quarter the amount of sugar in there. If it's white flour, I'll substitute it for whole grain, self-raising flour or something. So we can make a lot of different healthier swaps ourselves at home when we're doing home baking as well. So obviously not, quote unquote, as detrimental to our health as if we're eating that mass produced kind of supermarket product stuff. And having said that, it's not bad. It really does come down to the amount overall. So if you have a couple of biscuits occasionally, it's not like you're an unhealthy person, but if you're having biscuits with your tea or coffee every single day for morning tea, you probably want to have another relook at your diet to see what other little extra things are slipping in, because it's probably, for the most part, considered a little bit too regular to be healthy long term.
Yeah. And I just wanted to ask you my last question. It's about superfoods. It's a real buzzword, but what do you think is the cheapest superfood that we should be chasing?
And this is a funny one, right? Because if you said superfood, everyone's like, oh, eye roll, like how much is this going to cost me? Mine are definitely budget friendly, and they're things that people don't ever consider superfood. My first one are beans and legumes, because they're cheap as chips. I don't have the time to soak my beans and legumes overnight. I buy them in a tin. I give them a really good wash, and they cost me $1.50 at the supermarket. So beans and legumes, they've got protein, they've got carbohydrates, and they've got prebiotic fibers in there as well, which help to feed your gut health, which is awesome. They're what I call a superfood because they fall between that macronutrient column of they can be a carb or they can be a protein as well. And they're the best thing to keep in your pantry to just help to bulk up a meal to make it that little bit more affordable. And my last one, Tiff, I would say is onion and garlic. So a lot of people forget that onion and garlic also count towards your vegetable count. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to have 3 cups of onion into a meal. It's not like you'd use the same amount as broccoli, but regularly adding onion and garlic to as many meals as possible is wonderful because, again, they're that natural type of prebiotic. They help to feed the good bacteria in your gut, which is what we want, because the better our gut bacteria, the more diverse our gut microbiome, which then helps with positive flow-on effects in terms of immunity, in terms of inflammation. It can even help with different types of hormones and weight loss as well. So the better our gut health, the better our overall health and our body overall as well. So I love things like onion and garlic. Some people are a little bit more sensitive to them if they do have a little bit of IBS, but I would say try not to cut it all out altogether. Even if you can use like a quarter or an eighth of an onion across like 4 to 6 servings of a meal, that's still better than nothing if you are that little bit more sensitive to them. But a really, really wonderful, in my book, superfood, because we are feeding all of our good gut bacteria as well and positive contributing to our vegetable intake for the day as well.
Yeah. Amazing. Leanne, I learned so much from you. So if people want to listen to your podcast, see your website, where should they go?
So I've got 2 podcasts. The first one is the Nutrition Catch, which I run with my co-host and other dietitian, Susie. And then I've got my second podcast, which is the Leanne Ward Nutrition Podcast. And that's where I interview, experts all over the world. And the first podcast, Nutrition Couch, is which Susie and I just chat every week. We talk about supermarket trends. We talk about media news products. We do client case studies. So if you want to learn about nutrition in real life, what I like to say, definitely check out the Nutrition Couch. It's the #1 nutrition podcast in Australia. We're very proud of what we do. We love chatting every single week, and we really break it down into simple, easy to understand messages for our listeners as well.
Well, I'll be listening. Thank you so much, Leanne.
Thanks so much, Tiff. Good to be back on.
Thanks so much for listening to Bounce Forward. I love having your company, so please DM me on Instagram at tiffhall_XO and let me know what topics you'd love me to cover. Don't forget to rate and review me on your podcast app. Speak soon. Happy days.